Because this is 2017, multiple women coming forward to accuse Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore of molesting them when they were children isn't enough to disqualify him in the eyes of a lot of voters, unfortunately, in Alabama, but also in the eyes of some right-wing media outlets and the president. So we're gonna start with Breitbart, who has been steadfast defenders of Roy Moore since the first accusation. They held firm as more and more women came forward, as we found out that he was banned from a mall, as we found out last week that he was, they had a cop watching him when he was near the cheerleaders at a game. He was hanging out in high schools. Through all of that, they've defended him, and at times their defense has been a little bit ridiculous, as it'll be in this video where you're going to see Breitbart editor Joel Pollak with a new defense of Roy Moore.
She was very young to have somebody who's that age come on her, let alone if it was an unwanted touching known as an assault.
You know, in 1973, Ringo Starr hit #1 on the Billboard charts with the song "You're 16, You're Beautiful in Your Mind," and it was a remake of an earlier song. He was 30-something at the time, singing about a 16-year-old. You want to take away Ringo Starr's?
You can't be serious.
I mean,
you can't be serious.
You can't be serious. You're talking about relationships that were legal.
You think that Ringo Starr's song is supposed to be a nod towards allowing 30-year-old men to prey on teenagers? You don't believe that, Joel. You're a parent. You don't believe that.
You're also a parent, and you know that when you raise sons, the risk that our sons face today is that they're going to be exposed to accusations that may or may not be true. And that's a new thing.
What do you think? Ringo Starr defense, is that the new thing?
Well, look, to be fair to the conservatives, they do projection. That's and whatever they're thinking, they assume you're thinking. So they don't know what's in Ringo Starr's head, and my guess is that it was maybe, I don't know if it was a reference to a 16-year-old talking about another 16-year-old. I don't think it was, Ringo Starr didn't even write that song.
An earlier song.
Right, I don't think it was Ringo Starr being like, I really would like to have sex with a 16-year-old. I don't think that's where he was going.
But regardless, I think this is gonna hurt Ringo Starr in the polls.
That's an excellent point. But the reason I bring all that up is because they do have a singer who did sing about having sex with underage girls, and that's Ted Nugent. And he's a conservative star. And in fact, Mike Huckabee sang the song with him once. They had a little guitar, combo that they did about how they wanted to go over and have sex with the underage daughter of a neighbor. Okay, and so they think, well, our stars love to sing about having sex with underage girls.
Yeah.
So I assume so does Ringo Starr and other liberals or something.
Yeah.
Whatever Ringo's politics are.
Yeah.
So I am with you. There's a good reason why Roy Moore and Ringo Starr are neck and neck in Alabama in this race.
Exactly.
Or maybe Ringo's not in the race, and by the way, neither is Ted Nugent, and it's Roy Moore versus Doug Jones, and Doug Jones has not sung any songs about 16-year-olds or molested them, or in one case, very stark case, tried to rape them as Roy Moore did.
Yeah.
So even if you go with Pollak's ideology of 16, not so bad, you know what I'm saying, right? Okay, fine. And by the way, I think it is a fair point to say that 16 is the legal age of consent in Alabama. To say that in 7 out of the 8 cases, on the issue of age, he did not break the law. By itself is a fair point.
Although generally, a lot of the times that 16 is the age of consent in a lot of those states, it is the age of consent, but not for an unlimited age span later. It's for a few years later. And then for people who are much older, it is still 18. I'm not sure specifically in Alabama.
No, in Alabama it isn't.
Okay.
In Alabama, it's just if you're 16, you could have sex with an 84-year-old. Okay, as long as, by the way, first of all, one of the women is under 16. She was 14 at the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Was she a fan of Ringo Starr?
Okay.
Seems hypocritical at this point.
And I know that Ringo talked about bringing 14-year-old girls into the woods and stripping them naked, as Roy Moore is alleged to have done.
Yeah.
And allegations so credible that even Republican senators have said, I believe her. I think that Roy Moore did do that, and he found a way to separate her from her mom. He's such a predator. I don't think
he always separates them in all of those stories. He's good at corralling them away from their mothers.
Yeah, and I don't think Ringo Starr or anyone else was banned from a mall for being a pervert, looking at underage girls and trying to talk to them and contact them and take them home. Was not banned from football games because he couldn't stop trying to pick up the cheerleaders as a person in his 30s.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, but the last one is the one I wanted to come back to. one of the 16-year-olds, Pollak says, come on, 16, what's the big deal, right? Okay, he's in his 30s, she's 16. He tried to rape her in the parking lot. According to her description, which again is exceedingly credible, so credible that almost all the Republican leadership believes her. He ripped her clothes off while she was waiting for, she mistook him as trustworthy because he worked as a district attorney, and he put her in a parking lot in a car between a dumpster where there were no lights, ripped her clothes off, fondled her, and tried to force her head down onto his crotch. And then when she was screaming, he pushed her out of the car into the cold pavement and drove away. I don't think there's a Ringo Starr song about that. That is so vicious.
Maybe
I don't
Ted
even
Nugent.
think. No, I was going to say I don't even think Ted Nugent has a song about that.
I'm not going to listen to find out, but I don't know. Yeah, and look, another pastor came out, I don't know how many days ago this was, but we talked about in the production meeting, and said that, look, in his defense, these 14 and 15 and 16-year-old girls, they dress like they're 21, which is, I guess, could be true. I don't know, I didn't live back then, and that might deceive the eye, but to be fair, when you're waiting outside of their trigonometry class, that should sort of make it a little bit more clear that they're not 21.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, so.
I can't wait for Joel Pollak to go back on TV and say, I mean, when you're raping a 16-year-old, is that really rape? Yeah. Okay, so Joel, what's your defense for that? Yeah. I don't know, you're in the defense business and you think 30-year-olds having sex with 16-year-old girls is no problem? Okay, I hear you, brother, yeah. No problem. How about the rape part? How about the 14-year-old part? You're still supporting Roy Moore, right? So I don't mind the 16-year-olds, and I don't mind the rape, and I don't mind the 14-year-old. Should be the complete sentence. Exactly. Otherwise, you shouldn't be backing him. If you are backing him, apparently you think those are not that big a deal either. Yeah. And I'm positive. There's no songs about that. There's no movies to the best of my knowledge about that.
Maybe a haiku.
By the way, I'm sorry, I'm partly wrong. Wait for it. Tomorrow they'll be back on CNN going, I mean, there was the movie and the book called Lolita, right? And if there was a movie, what, you're asking Roy Moore not to sleep with 14-year-olds? What kind of an unreasonable request is that? TYT membership gets you commercial-free Young Turks. Download it, stream it, podcast it, get all the network shows, and support independent media. TYTnetwork.com/join.